YouTube Live. Taking its own sweet time, probably because of the title.
Oh, right. Right.
We go right over here. We're up and over. Going into oh yeah. Remember. That's I think I made it from there, right? And then I can keep going on. Oh,
Yes. Okay.
okay. I promise I'm almost there.
Oh, that's okay.
Ready, go here. Make sure that we're right where we need to be there. And I'm just sharing 2 more places and then we'll be good to go.
Okay. Sounds good.
Probably 3 more places. What I need to do is figure out how to do that. We will start in 3-minute thingy so then I can get them all here at the same time. If anybody is
Oh,
watching and knows how to show me how to do that, please put it in the comments. That would be so great.
I didn't even know you could do that. That's
Yeah,
great.
you can put a little stopper and then you can go in and do all of this stuff without.
Awesome.
Okay. I'm not going to be able to get it there. If anybody is on stop CRT, please put this there as well because it's all the same thing. And we will start. So good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Happy Saturday. Today, we're going to talk about the not so happy things that are going on in our schools with starting with Paulo Freire. The book club is, our book for the month is The Queering of the American Child by Logan Lancing. I just want to start off at the very beginning by letting you know that Logan Lancing is not particularly a religious person. I really appreciate his book because he goes with the sources. He oftentimes provides the sources, and I will be sharing with you my PowerPoint that just shows you, that just has the pages. We read directly from it, try to keep as much emotion out of it. My guest or my co-host for this is Christine Stephen, and she has a background in psychology. She was a professor at Antioch, correct?
Yes.
At
Hmm.
Antioch, yes. And so we just want to go through this because we think it's very, very important, probably the most vital information that a parent can have, or even a teacher can have. This is not about attacking teachers, um, but it is going to attack the edu activist
Hmm.
because that is something very different from your traditional teacher. So I'm just going to share my screen right here and we will get started. We're doing chapters 4 through 6 today. So awesome. Liam, can you see everything here? All right. So we are going to start with talking about Paulo Freire. And I wanted to do that part relatively quickly because I've talked about him quite a bit before, but he's really kind of the head person. If you don't understand who Paulo Freire is, then you really don't understand what's going on in education. So on this page, Paulo Freire is the titan in the field of education. He's a Brazilian Marxist educator and his influence cannot be overstated.
Mhm.
You will find his influence in every nook and cranny of US education, from how teachers are trained to design and implement curriculum to how schools now discipline students, and that's called restorative justice. Paulo Freire argued that the normal educational practices literally deposit society. Let me just let somebody in. Paulo Freire argued that normal educational practices literally deposit society with all its oppression and dehumanizing. Oh, goodness. To accept and reproduce unjust status quos of society without question. So what he means by that is that when we think of education, and some schools still do this, particularly charter and private schools, when young children are in school, say the elementary age children, they are taught to basically accept information. So we teach them basic things like 2 + 2 = 4. And that's a fact. And maybe we throw 2 apples on the you would draw a picture of 2 apples, and we'd draw a picture of 2, I don't know, bananas. And we show them how many pieces of fruit, and we have them cut it. And that's a basic fact, that 2 + 2 = 4. What Paulo Freire suggests is, what he believes is that that's just teaching normative. So it's teaching the exact same system that he believes should be dismantled.
Mhm.
And so then education needs to become something very different. And it says, okay, I can go down a little bit. Oops, that's it. Okay. Freire claimed that the true purpose of education was to help learners cast off their quote unquote magical consciousness and push them to develop consciousness. Critical consciousness is the belief that one must read socio-political conditions critically and take action. So what he believes education's only purpose is to create activists. Its only purpose is to make people look through the world critically, but not analytically. Do you have any thoughts on that, Christine?
Yeah, I think it's important because we talk about critical thinking in other terms in other contexts, and it's like, yeah, we should all be learning critical, thinking skills, but that's about taking ideas and different, theories or different things you're learning, and thinking about whether you agree, whether you disagree, what's evidence to support it, what evidence does not support it, and take a position. That's kind of, and even college, one of its main benefits is that that's what it was supposed to help you do, is because we have to make decisions on our lives on a daily basis, and then bigger ones, of course, for our future. So that word critically in this context is completely different than what it means to be critical thinker. Critical theory is more about studying the oppressive dismantling society and the oppressive components, which are pretty much everything that keep us from achieving our goals, so that eventually, once we dismantle those, we become an equitable society. That means the same outcome for everybody, regardless of one person's merit, regardless of one person's, access to resources, regardless of one person's lack of trying versus trying. The idea is that at the end of the day, the outcome is equitable. And again, these are changes in words, just in phrases that we all know, that are ever so slight and mean completely different things. And that's what's hard sometimes to get through or to kind of conceptualize. And that's all done by design.
Right. It makes parents not even question, because they
Yes.
say, of course, I want my child to be a critical thinker. But you also have to think about young children. I was in a kindergarten classroom yesterday, and young children have no concept of critical thinking. We
Hmm.
spent an hour teaching kids how to open a folder and put their homework inside of it,
Hmm.
because they're little and they're only learning everything that they hear, they believe is truth. So we can talk about what this means for the college age person who hopefully has some sense of being able to think for themselves. but this book really focuses on K-12,
Mm-hmm.
and K is kindergarten. So what this means in layman's terms is that someone who has critical consciousness believes that everything in society is designed to oppress them. And they are only and the only way to see the truth about the world is to become a Marxist who practices critical theories. That is the only acceptable way. And as we get deeper into this, you will find that that's not a joke. And you will also find that that is even in our local schools, that the only acceptable way to see the world is through a Marxist lens and to practice critical theory. I think that this line down on the bottom, people who have critical consciousness are religious fanatics, and they are, excuse my language, I'm just reading here, they are hell-bent on breaking society and steering us towards the end of history. You know about cults, Christine?
Absolutely. And I know that when we first reviewed the first two chapters of this book where cults were discussed, we talked about this a little bit, but that cult, sort of the idea that um, if you step outside of that cult, if you choose not to believe what those people believe, if you choose a different way other than the Marxist way, you are ousted from your society or your community. You're ousted, you're completely isolated. And so that draw to be connected and to want to have connections with people can override somebody's ability to actually step outside of a cult or to turn and head the other direction, because there's no room for questioning. And in critical theory, there's no room for questioning what the Marxist belief system is about. It's hard to leave because we don't want to leave something that we've known. You make friends at school, you want to come home and, tell your parents about friends you've made and do all these fun things. But actually taking your kids out of the environment is very difficult to do. It's important, but it's also extremely difficult. That's very cult-like in its nature, that your child, if they do not assume the same belief systems, they're not going to be welcome in class. They won't be welcome in their peer group. And that's one of the most important things that's happening for children in school, K through 12 especially, is the development of friendships and understanding what those mean. So it's very scary, I think, to think about the cult components of critical theory in general and what it seeks to do.
Right. And especially as we move down, when we start to wrap up today, we'll talk a lot about social and emotional learning. We talk directly about Castle. Again, something that is definitely here, something that many of our administrators have said, we love it. We are all on board. So just remember that as we move forward, that even in local, rural areas, people are getting sucked up into this. It does give them a sense oftentimes of a moral superiority, and it does feel oftentimes very religious. In fact, what you can't see in this bottom line is Henry Giroux was a close friend of Paulo Freire, talks about it as being a new Easter. And he talks
Mm-hmm.
about old ideas being being destroyed, old values being destroyed and replaced with a new arising, and those old ideas. And he is very specifically talking about the Christian faith here. So when he talks about that, and he says that those are destroyed, they are replacing them with something new. So if you're an atheist, that's perfectly fine. But what about when it's your ideas that are being removed? What about
Mm-hmm.
when it's your ideas of just basic common sense that's being removed, so that these new Marxist ideas that many of us look at and go, what the heck is that? Many of us would not agree with. I'm going to move to the next page.
Mm-hmm.
So this is more about Paulo Freire, and I just wrote down on the side a religion. The pedagogy of the oppressed is humanist and liberation theology, has two distinct stages. The first is for the oppressed to unveil the world of oppression, and through praxis commit themselves to its transformation. So how does that sound like religion to you?
I mean, It absolutely sounds like religion. I'm wish I had put on my glasses here
I
so I
know
could go
this is a
back.
terrible one. I get
No,
better.
that's okay. No, that's
Yeah.
okay. Um, so I think that there's the idea of transformation exists almost in every religion. And I think the use of that word or that idea of transforming oneself, I think in general, I mean, if you look at Christianity and the umbrella of Christianity, what falls underneath that, our opportunity to, transform into a spiritual being that has faith, for example, that's part of a transformation. So this kind of falls in line with what you would expect from religion, which is something that is transformative or can be transformative. It's supposed to be transformative in its own way. Um,
But this is
and
like darkening it because
this is,
regular
yes,
religion has the redemption arc. It has the
yes,
you join it
yes,
for a sense of hope,
yes,
whereas in the last page they talked about an end of history.
yes.
So
Well,
it's
the problem is that with this particular ideology, there is no end, there's no end there's no perfect ideal world that you end up reaching. No matter
right,
what, as we're living and breathing human beings walking this planet, it's always going to be present. The oppression, the racism, all the isms. There's no way to eradicate that. So you're constantly fighting to, fight back against this oppressive system, but you're never at the finish line. You never end. We never come to some point where it's like, wow, we've all become not racists now, air quotes, and now we all can love each other and have an equitable society. That's communism, and it doesn't work. That's what ends up happening. People eat themselves, each other is what they do. It turns on itself because there isn't any redemption and there isn't any point of total, nirvana that's reached that they've decided includes a world without oppression. But oppression is also very broadly defined in these terms, where anything can fall underneath it, and that's also another key point is that because it's so broadly defined, almost every single one of us would be able to relate to this. And that's pretty much the goal is to
right.
get every single person in the web of continuing on this particular narrative, so to speak.
Well, the goal is to make sure that every single person is queer.
Yes,
They start with the low hanging fruit, and
yes.
their
Which
goal
are the
is to make sure
kids?
anybody existing,
Yes.
well, not just the kids, the minorities,
The minorities also.
disabilities that you
Yes.
talk about, right? I mean, there's so much. Let's move to the next. So, in the second stage, in which the reality of oppression has already been transformed, so against the reality of oppression, even if you don't feel that you're oppressed, somebody's going to teach you that you indeed are. And
Yes.
after that sense of oppression has been performed, then this pedagogy ceases to belong to the oppressed and becomes the pedagogy of all people,
Mm-hmm.
becomes the praxis, it becomes what all people must have. And that is the process of permanent liberation. Do you want to be an activist every single day? Do you want that to be your utter existence every single day? Because that's really what where we're headed with this stuff.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. And angry. What comes with activism is a lot of anger.
Right.
It's projected anger, it's rage, and that is fueled. Okay, that fire is fueled by all of these ideas. And they mean to destroy society as we know it. That's what they mean for us to do at the end of the day.
Yes.
The
Starting with
riots of 2020 and the summer of 2020 was a very good example and a very good microcosm of what all of this is supposed to be leading toward, right? Set the system on fire, literally. Your houses, your churches, your communities, your schools, everything on fire because you are being oppressed and your power is being taken from you. The way to do this is also quite violent, whether the language is violent or the activity itself is violent. You can be an activist and be a kind human being, but this is not the way that activism works under this model. It seeks to bring all of that anger up in you, and for you to use that rage to then go out and destroy.
Absolutely. Yeah, a constant living in a place of rage is
Hmm.
really,
Hmm.
you want to talk about unhealthy, right? The
Yes.
hypocrisy is insane to me. I'm like,
Yes.
you want to make, I think this is one of the last really awful ones in
Oh,
terms
that's okay. I
of, okay.
I have my glasses, but they're in
Okay.
another room. That's okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
okay, through action in depth, that the cultural domination is culturally confronted. So it's just constantly always confronting, always saying that there is a problem with society. Once you get rid of one thing, then here comes another one. It's that old poem. First they came for these people, then they came for these people, then they came for these people, and eventually they came for me, and there was nobody left to stand.
Hmm.
That's really what this is.
Hmm.
So, oh crud, I hate that I have this little line here that says you were screen sharing. Okay, his method is simple. Um, Literacy lessons become meditations, which is to say that critical Marxist interpretation, that is, academic material, becomes an excuse to talk about radicalizing political issues on critical Marxist terms. So education becomes any education, and we'll talk about it in terms of a math lesson, but any type of education becomes a means to an end.
Hmm.
That's really it in a nutshell. Again, this book is Logan Lancing's The Queering of the American Child. If you can't see um, everything on the pages, I highly recommend getting the book. You can get it in Audible, or you can get it, of course, in hard copy.
Yes,
And
and
we
it's very digestible, even if the concepts are new to anybody. I think he's written in a very digestible fashion, so it's
Yes,
easy to understand, I think.
yes. So here, I'm just going to skip down. The explicit goal of Freire's method is to motivate learners to become awakened, i.e., woke.
Whoa.
This is the whole woke thing. The whole goal is to make sure that
Yes.
you are staying woke.
Yes.
Remember, if you don't know who that is impersonating, well, she's running for office. So there you
Yes. Yes.
go.
That, that's funny.
So the explicit goal of Freire's method is to motivate learners to become awakened, revolutionary activists charged with denouncing everything, and in doing so, announcing the prophetic vision, again, religious speak. And these are quotes. So in doing so, announcing the prophetic vision of the communist utopia. Let's see what I've got. I'm going to skip because it says, nope. So radical transformation of society, merely rebellious attitudes are insufficient, though they are indispensable. So these are our children. Look at these precious kids that we've got that we want the world for. And just having a rebellious attitude is simply not enough. It is, as they say, and I'm quoting Freire here in 1998, merely rebellious attitudes or actions are insufficient, though they are indispensable response to legitimate anger. It is necessary to go beyond rebellious attitudes to a more radically critical and revolutionary position.
Mm,
That's what Paulo Freire,
yes.
all of our teachers are learning from, even if they don't know, and we will discuss that. But even if they don't know, this is who they're learning from.
Yes.
It is necessary to go beyond rebellious attitudes to a more radically critical and revolutionary position, which is, in fact, a position not simply of denouncing injustice, their version of injustice, but to announcing a new utopia.
That's what's promised, isn't it? It's a utopian world. You will have nothing, you will own nothing, and you'll be happy, right? Where did that statement come from? That's what this is talking about, I think, here.
Very much so, yes. So, and then here we go. This Easter, which results in the changing of consciousness, must be existentially experienced. The real Easter is not commemorative rhetoric. It is practice. It is historical involvement. The old Easter of rhetoric, this is their words, is dead, with no hope of resurrection. Christianity is dead with no hope
Yes,
of resurrection. And now we bring on wokeism as the new religion.
because where's the hope? Wokeism is going to promise a false sense of hope.
Yes.
And once you've destroyed hope in every other way, and you've destroyed hope in religion, you've destroyed hope in every, other kind of scenario, we're the answer. We are the answer. Us wokeists are the answer, and our particular ideologies are the answer. That's what brings salvation. Salvation that you are not, receiving from your religious,
Right.
practice, which is dead, essentially, as he's saying. It
Right.
no longer is. Well, where are we
Well,
going to go for that? As
and
humans, we want that.
how this plays out is that um there are people who will believe that they are woke, will join woke causes, will, become allies. And then one thing they cannot agree with, and then they become the excluded one.
Hmm.
Right. And so in terms of that utopia, and that's what it means to constantly destroy it, is that we're not talking about destroying people like me who are 100% not interested in the woke movement. They're talking about people who are 80% involved, but
Hmm.
it's never enough. And then
Hmm.
once they get that one group, then they look for more, because once you are taught to live in a sense of constant rage, you can't turn it off. It's not
Hmm.
like a light switch. Okay, I've done enough. Now I'm done.
Hmm.
There isn't that. And
Hmm.
that's why we find a lot of people will reach out to us for
Yes.
critical therapy antidote. People reach out to me privately because
Yes.
they're like, what happened? I was part of this group. We have a group here called Mormon Women for Ethical Government, and they will struggle session you. If you disagree, you are completely removed off of their lists. And then those people find themselves so alone. And that's the thing, is that this stuff has no hope. It
Hmm.
literally is a religion of resentment.
Hmm.
Okay, next one. And again, friends, I'm reading this directly from Freire's 1985 book, and this is on page 123, where he
Hmm.
talks about a new Easter.
Hmm.
So, and I learned about Paulo Freire from a local teacher who suggested that I read his book. Okay. Oh goodness. Once again, can you see it? Because I've got the little you are screen sharing thing there. Okay,
Yeah, I can.
go ahead. Let's say critical
For your areas, do you want to start? Or
with the
with the green? Okay. And critical educators believe that the only way to reduce inequality and achieve social justice is to push kids to develop critical consciousness and become political activists.
That's their only way, is to push our children into what they want for our children.
And critical consciousness is sort of a state of being where you're constantly, if you're constantly looking for what is it that needs to be dismantled. It's a
Yes.
state of reflection, but it's reflection that's not internal on your developing oneself. It's a reflection on the community at large, the society at large, and what it is that's wrong with it, and where you're going to take personal responsibility as an activist to not only be an activist, but also recruit others in changing it. That's what this critical consciousness is about. It's about spending time reflecting externally. And where do I see the problems? And where do I see oppression? Where do I see that I'm being oppressed? Where do I see that I might be oppressing someone else? And then it's also recruitment into the cause. Okay, how do I grab people and waken them up so that they're woke? Okay,
Right.
and move forward with this plan.
Right. And so Paulo Freire's work was eventually welcomed into the heart of North American academic educational canon. And this was done by Henry Giroux, who was an avowed communist. So that's how it got into our schools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So educators were to completely abandon what US education once was, which was already heavily influenced by social reconstructionists in favor of Freire's prophetic vision. Education was now more about social engineering than learning, more about addressing quote unquote inequality than imparting knowledge, and more about critical social justice than reading, writing, and math. So,
I've said this before on probably, I don't know if it was your podcast or not, but when I was a child, I went to private school, but when I was a child and up in the Bay Area, Northern California, they took the word God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. And I remember I might have been 8 years old, if that, 9 or 10, maybe. I remember thinking that we were moving in such a bad direction by doing that, but I didn't have the language or the conceptualization of why that was. But I knew something about that was unpatriotic. I knew something about that was negative. It was the beginning or the start of seeing some negative things happening where uh, I couldn't describe it, but I could definitely sense that something was off. And I don't know why this particular passage just kind of reactivated that memory in me. But because I could not imagine that we would ever do that in the school I went to. And we folded the flag every single day the way it's supposed to be. There was a lot of ritual, right? Tradition and ritual. And it was a Catholic school, and there's a lot of ritual and tradition in all religions, and it was a religious school. But that removal, for some reason, as a kid, just got me to thinking something here is going way wrong, and I don't know where it goes from here. I just couldn't describe it yet, and this happened to just trigger that memory.
right.
But I guess because it's talking about was already heavily influenced by the social reconstructionists, I guess that's what triggered
Well, and
thinking
I
even
think
back
that
then.
I think that it's just, well, and we were graduating around the time when this stuff started coming into school.
Yes,
But it came in much more subtle than it is now. After 20
correct.
came in, they're just like dump it all at us because
Yes,
we're not going to fight back. I don't know what they think, but something. It was just crazy.
yes, it was just start. I mean, and we're talking about 30, 35 years ago. And
Right.
that's about, I mean, we're similar in age, so
Yeah.
that's about the time.
Right. Okay. So culturally relevant teaching. That critical pedagogy went mainstream in children's classrooms. This was with Gloria Ladson Billings. So Gloria Ladson Billings was a Marxist educator who popularized culturally relevant teaching, the other CRT. It is one of Freire's direct theoretical descendants. So here's the deal. I saw in a classroom 3 books on culturally relevant teaching, again, in my rural area. The reason that I was subbing in the classroom was so that the teacher could teach this to other teachers. This is what their training was while I was there.
Hmm. Wow.
So, yeah,
How did you handle that?
that's the time when I took the pictures of the books in the classroom. So I
Uh,
took a picture of those 3 books that were
uh-huh.
on the teacher's desk, and was no longer a substitute teacher.
I understand. Okay. Because I know I would have had such a strong reaction myself, just thinking about going in there and
Well, it was the
knowing
first
exactly
time,
what they're doing. Yeah.
and that was the thing, is that I went into these schools because I wanted to assuage my fears. I wanted to believe what I was being told. And we will read about how and why um, administrators are lying to parents.
Yes.
So, but I wanted to believe, the good. And then I walked into
Yes.
a classroom, and that was the first time I'd heard, oh, wait, so critical race theory has another name, and that's culturally responsive teaching or culturally relevant teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started digging into that. So
Mm-hmm.
Today, now this is the tricky part. Many of today's teachers and administrators have no idea that they are being taught by Freire because
Hmm.
they've rebranded, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of teachers who, if you said, we're going to teach you from a communist viewpoint how to
Right.
teach our kids, they would say you're out of your mind.
Yes.
So I almost said freaking, nothing worse. But
Hmm.
but
Right.
but there's a lot of teachers who would say there's no way I'm doing that. And I respect those teachers, but they don't understand that this is literally what they're being taught. They
Yes.
are being taught culturally responsive teaching.
Yes, Carrie, they always sneak it in.
Oh, you're
They
there.
they don't announce. Oh, you didn't know? You couldn't
So
see me?
I didn't know that you were. I can't tell if you're still there. I couldn't see you, but yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
They always sneak it
Keep
in.
going.
They don't announce, hey, we're here. Marxism is here. We're doing this fun thing. It's
Right.
called Marxism. They don't announce it. They just sneak it in.
But I also, don't you also think there are some teachers who don't even know that like they go to a training, they learn this new idea that is about empathy and being more welcoming to more students, and they go, oh, this is wonderful for my toolbox.
See, that's what I was going to say is that they cover this stuff is all wrapped in a pretty bow. When you actually think about those words, culturally relevant teaching, there's something that sounds really positive about that, though. There's something that sounds positive where you're being attentive to how we all come from different cultures and we all come from different backgrounds, and here we are together, and let's learn from one another and let's learn about different cultures. That's the way that it's packaged. They're very good at using language, at weaponizing language or hijacking language, I should say, for their cause. They're very good at that. It's not very direct. So you hear something like that and you're like, oh, cultural competency was what they were talking about in psychology school when I was studying to be a therapist long before I became a professor. And I thought cultural competence, oh, I understand. We're supposed to be learning that we don't infringe upon somebody else's cultural, experience or viewpoint. We want to be there as, a place to learn about it. That's the thing that bothers me the most is the hijacking of the language so you don't understand what it actually means.
Exactly.
I agree with
Me
both.
too.
Oh, go ahead, Elizabeth. What were you gonna say?
No, I said exactly. I was just agreeing with her. That
Yeah,
hijacking the language just really bothers me.
right. So what bothers me as a minority is that you think that this is important. So it really does. I'm
That's a good
sorry.
point.
I want my children to go to school, and
Yeah.
I want them to have the best education possible so that they can compete at a global scale.
Yes.
I don't want anything watered down for my children. It doesn't
Right.
mean that I don't want to learn about different cultures. It means that if you think that everything that you need to approach the teaching of my child in a careful way that doesn't offend them, you're teaching my child to be a narcissist.
Yes.
You're teaching them to be consumed and that it has to be all about them in order for them to be capable of learning. No, some
Yes.
things are simply true. And our kids should learn those things. So it doesn't
That's true.
that's where I am just like that's what frustrates me is that you think that that's why people send their kids to school, and especially if you think that that's why hardworking immigrants who have come to this country to give their child a better opportunity and a better chance than that they've had, you're simply wrong. Most
Oh,
people,
yeah.
that's not what they want for their children.
No, my parents didn't want that. I'm first generation. My parents are
Right.
immigrants. This is
Yeah.
absolutely not what they wanted me learning in school. They wanted me to learn in school how to be, as you said it perfectly, this attain the skills and the knowledge to be able to be competitive in the world and to be able to go for the job that I wanted or go for the profession that I wanted. They wanted us to actually have an education. The other stuff was a side note, if you
Exactly.
will.
Well, and they've had like clubs for after school so that different groups can go, like Jewish Community Center and things like that, so that you can learn about your culture.
Sure.
But that should be a parent's prerogative, and it definitely shouldn't take up the time of regularly teaching, of giving our kids that ability to compete. or as my friend who runs a private school says, or the ability to sit at the table.
Yes. And I have a
Mhm.
family member who's a special education teacher, and she teaches in a part of California that's very red. It's a very conservative area, and it's full of immigrants. Most of the people that live there, it's like 53 or 54%, are immigrants that have come here from various places. It's a farming town, it's a farming community. So there's a lot of agriculture. Those parents, half of them don't speak English, and what they want for their kids is to learn English, to learn proper math and skill set, read and write, and everything that they need to do to be successful. That is what they're working for. We're
Right.
here and we're working our rear ends off because this is what we want to give you. So this idea that if you're a Mexican American, you're being oppressed, and Mexican Americans want want handout, want whatever it is. I'm kind of
You're
losing my words here, but the idea is that that's actually not what that community wants. In fact, that community is very ultra conservative. They want the
right.
exact opposite. They want you to have the education, the knowledge, have a family, have children, and they're very closed off to ideas of trans, ideas of gay, lesbian, and we don't need to go into all that now, but they're very highly misunderstood, and what they want and what their values are highly misunderstood. That's not what they're here. That's not what they're about,
Right.
especially if they're immigrants just here in your first generation, or you immigrated yourself and you're in school and you're in the 5th grade or whatever.
Right. So back to Gloria. Her education left her convinced that teachers could only be successful in liberating their students if they were equipped. Of course, I cannot see.
Okay.
With and I believe that it's in course if they were equipped to explore things based on sexuality and culture in their classrooms. And again, who you are attracted to, what you identify as, anything else should be left out if you want to give kids the best possible outcome. It does not mean that we're cruel to children. It means that our job is to get that information into their heads.
That's right.
And they're doing the same. They're getting that information into their heads, but theirs is for an ideological purpose, not necessarily rooted in truth, because they don't believe in it.
That's right.
So she developed her theory. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so I'm all the way at the end of the book. I'm about probably 5 pages from finishing.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm reading the James Lindsay's afterward. It's heavy.
Yeah.
I bet.
My thought, my main thought from that is Marxist theology is difficult to wrap my head around. And then I asked why. And it's because it's nonsense wrapped up in intellectual jargon.
That's so good. Yes.
It's I definitely feel that stupor of thought while studying this. And I believe a lot of people have been duped because it sounds so smart.
Yes. They feel like they're enlightened, right? It's
Yes.
that way of knowing. Well, we are the experts is often said. And they feel really good about being the experts. Okay, I'm going to go back to her. She developed her theory of culturally relevant teaching to address multiple domains of oppression, not just economic class. And once again, I cannot see because the line is in front of it. Can you start with the green?
Yes.
Okay.
It is meant to address the cumulative way in which multiple forms of discrimination combine, overlap, and intersect in the lives and experiences of students. The culturally relevant teacher's job is explicitly given as to develop a critical consciousness in students, teaching them how to use a Marxist socio-political analysis to understand how their cultural identity, race, sex, gender, etc., and lived experiences, in quotes, are excluded from classrooms and society.
So it's always a way to find out how a person is a victim.
Yes, that's what that critical consciousness is about.
Yeah.
It's not this, self-reflection about, you and how to be a better person and how to attain things in life that you want and the development of oneself. It's about what has the world done to me? What has the world done to others? That's a critical consciousness that they're hoping to instill, that that's really a constant in the back of your mind.
And I think the big important takeaway is that it's not often rooted in fact.
Yes.
Yes.
It's rooted in its opinion.
It's opinion, it's interpretation, it's perspective, perception, and I mean perception. It's not a fact necessarily at all.
So now we're talking again about what school administrators and teachers have been trained. So culturally relevant teaching is now considered an essential practice, not an optional, but an essential practice for eliminating achievement gaps between student groups. They're lying. I want to not be opinionated here, but there's a woman that I love, and her name is Catherine Burbelsing, and she is called the strictest headmistress. In her school, she bans woke teachers.
Oh, I love it.
Her school is in the inner cities of London. And it's called the Michaela School. You can look it up all over on YouTube. This is a school where kids really have no opportunities outside. Inside those doors, they are just pummeled with facts and information and work and homework and all of these things. And then when they graduate, most of those children go on to higher ed in the Ivy League schools, which, I'm not thrilled with the Ivy League schools, but to go from nothing to have opportunities in the Ivy League schools, because they don't do this, because they refuse to put this into their classrooms. So
what was the name of that school?
It's called the Michaela School.
Michaela.
It is an awful lot like a certain school that we know about, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth and I work at the same school. So,
okay.
So culturally relevant teaching is now considered an essential practice for eliminating achievement gaps. Yep, you betcha. You know why? Because you're not allowed to achieve.
That's right. You're not allowed to achieve it. It's very reminiscent for me of when they took out when they took out the gifted program at high school in New York City. They took out the gifted math program because they didn't want to harm or offend the other students that weren't in the gifted math program. So they took it out.
Yes. Well, and this finishing line here, between student groups, reducing classroom conflict and maximizing every student's equal shot at the same outcome.
It's that same outcome is problematic.
Outcome.
Yep. Very problematic.
That's equity.
That's equity.
That's what they did to make a more equitable high school. That was their answer. Let's get rid of the gifted program. I gotta tell you, when I was a kid, I was in a lot of gifted programs. And if it weren't for that, they saved me, to be honest. I didn't have an easy time in school. I'm just, kind of sharing a little bit about me here. But what saved me was the fact that I was smart. I was in these gifted programs, and I was able to learn and to feel good about myself and to feel good about my grades and all of those things. And that's what actually saved me from K through 12 until I finally got to college. And so to have that taken away, I mean, we're talking about abuse here, psychological abuse.
Yeah.
That may sound very harsh, but it's actually very abusive, what they're doing to these children. And so it gets me very, very disturbed, because as a therapist, right, our way of thinking and operating is not unlike some of the things that the teachers are doing now. And it's not the role of the teacher to be doing that. So that is a huge part of the problem as well, is that they're trying to make these mini therapists out of these teachers. And that's not okay. That's not what school's for. That's also, they're not equipped to do it. That's not what it's not their job. It has no business there from a teacher. Like they have teaching kits on how to, teach how to teach mindfulness and all these different practices that are used in therapy. There are kits you can buy online without
Oh, yeah.
ever having, been educated in any of this stuff and bring it into your classroom.
Well, one of the most scary things I've seen are kids having counseling clubs.
Yeah.
That one's pretty
problematic,
right?
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Can you
My daughter was invited into one of those, and this was before I knew
what it was
to be aware of it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what happened there, and I wish that I wouldn't have allowed it. But anyway.
Well, and what we did when I was working at a high school, the kids would be allowed to come down to the care center is what we called it. They could skip out on a period or two of classes every day if they wanted, every week, it didn't matter, to come in and to get some counseling and to just relax on the couch. And the lines would wrap around the building of kids that were trying to come in. And this was at the cost of education. And as therapists who worked in the care center, I was always trying to push the kids back into school, back into their classrooms. And what was against me was what the care center policy was that we don't push kids to leave the counseling space. If anything, we promote them staying in the counseling space for as long as they need. Right? So hugely problematic.
Christine, can I make a point?
Yeah.
So this is my thought. I am not a therapist.
Yes.
I'm a mom.
Yes.
But I have come to believe that, because you mentioned abuse, and I've come to believe that bad therapy and abuse happens, and especially the mental health is very much damaged when it's not based in truth, when you're understanding and when you are not based in truth. And so when they're teaching this culturally relevant teaching and queer theory in schools, yeah, you're going to get a mental health crisis like you've never seen.
Yes.
Right.
Bingo.
Right. And that becomes the conveyor belt, which
highest rates of suicide. Yep. And depression and anxiety than we've ever seen. And people don't understand why, when there's more available resources to mental health than there ever have been before. And we have the worst outcomes that we've ever seen historically ever. It doesn't, these things aren't not making sense for a reason.
Yeah.
The people who created the problem should not be expected to fix the problem.
Oh, there you go.
So, can you read this next one?
Yes. Likewise, the goal of the culturally relevant teacher is to help students deconstruct their own cultures and determine how they specifically are oppressed by the dominant culture, or how their culture oppresses the marginalized culture. After modeling the deconstruction, the culturally relevant teacher's mission is to empower and inspire the students to change the dominant culture through social justice activism. Her job is to push students to develop critical consciousness.
So the main focus of education.
Not one word about teaching.
Right.
Not one word about teaching.
No, it's about turning the kids into activists. And I do want to say, having my son go back into public school, I do want to say that there are teachers who don't do this. There are teachers who do not do this, who stick to the traditional things. But I also want to say that even having one teacher who does do this has an impact. It really has an impact. My son sits around, looks at his classroom and thinks, wow, I feel really bad for the kids who don't know any better, because they're just drinking this stuff like Kool-Aid. Funny analogy there. I want to skip down and go into SEL, culturally relevant teaching and queering education. I'll just quickly hit that. It it is the same thing. That culture that they're supposed to move into is the culture of queer theory. They want every single child to identify as queer. As I'm going through, I might find something. Yeah, Gloria Ladson Billings and others pushed queer theory into schools so they could challenge the status quo of cultural norms related to sex, gender, and sexuality. It just became a massive push. Said another way, culturally relevant teachers need somewhere to turn to figure out how to handle the culture of sex, gender, and sexuality in the American classroom. Frere's theory of education is one that challenges existing concepts of knowledge and who counts as the knower. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So we're only supposed to listen to the people who have these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then I highlighted with the big with a big orange, queer theory is entirely concerned with analyzing and abolishing norms. That's all critical thinking is now.
Mm-hmm.
Analyzing to abolish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to get to SEL. I'm really, yes. So activists began querying not just the school curriculum, but school policies and procedures, all under the guise of becoming more culturally relevant. And then I guess here's a good one. All teaching is political. Our children now attend culturally relevant, diverse, and equitable, sustainable, and inclusive schools. They are all attending schools that push them to develop a critical consciousness. Queer Marxism is practiced in nearly every school in America today because Marxists captured US education decades ago.
That is huge for people to understand. I mean, huge.
And like we
because
said,
this didn't just show up in 2020 where
no,
it became on blast, right? This has been around for decades. It's slowly but surely crept in.
yes. So we're moving into chapter 5, the queer classroom. The queer theory literature describes inclusion as a journey without a destination, a range of possibilities without closure. So when queer activists say a space is inclusive, they aren't describing a static state, normally interpreted to mean everyone here is included, respected, and valued. Inclusion, like many of the practices of queering, is a never-ending practice. Inclusion means that you have to push out anything that someone finds offensive.
Yes.
So, and this is the tricky part that a lot of people might want to tune out on and feel like, oh my gosh, are they attacking disabled people? First off, we're only talking about what's in this book and the evidence that he's found. We're not attacking disabled. In fact, I get really frustrated because I find the same things that they did with Blacks, they're doing with disabled. In fact, in our school, at the state level, when they were going to talk about defending DEI, the first thing they did was brought in a bunch of disabled kids and tried to draw a connection that to be disabled and to be Black were a similar experience. I'm sorry.
That's sickening. That is so.
It's very bigoted, and it was upsetting, and watching like my jaw dropped because I just sat there going,
Sure.
It is not a disability
Horrifying.
to have brown skin.
It's horrifying.
You know, and we cannot diminish the needs of a disabled person. But when we start saying that everything is a disability, because that's
yeah,
what
that's what
everything's a
ableism is
disability,
about.
and with everything being a disability, then they can justify all the crazy stuff that we're about to jump into. Okay, I really want to find SEL. If you guys know exactly where the page is where they start talking about SEL, that might.
I wouldn't say reading I was reading it on my computer, so I don't.
Okay.
I don't have the hard copy.
Okay, to be an inclusive educator means eliminating certain words. Well, here we go. So to be an inclusive educator means eliminating certain
What page
words.
is it?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll get better at this. At least this time I didn't have to keep finding repeating the same pages. But to be an inclusive educator means eliminating words, phrases, and categorizations from the classroom while compelling everyone to speak how queer theory wants them to speak.
Yeah.
Pronouns, compelled speech.
Compelled beliefs.
Yes.
I'm still gonna skip through. I'm gonna make it to SEL. I wish I would have marked it. Yeah. Here's another one. Can you read me the part that says if a
If a school administrator, teacher, or student doesn't agree with queer theory, being labeled a bigot is the least of their worries. Many school districts clearly state that queer theory is now a legally protected ideology, and in parentheses, religion. If you don't use the student's preferred pronoun, what I just say, you're not only an immoral animal, you're possibly violating non-discrimination law. That is very true in the state of California. I'll tell you right now.
That's true for California. For us, it's a mandate, and you have to understand a mandate is not a law. A mandate does not have to be followed. And we have made steps, our legislatures, good on them, have made some steps to say
good.
we want a sovereign, good and bad, we want to be sovereign. However, there are clauses within that that say we want to be sovereign unless basically an expert tells us differently.
You're still waiting around for those experts.
Right? So, queer theory, once queer theory enters policy and classroom practice, it becomes incredibly difficult to weed it out. Queer theory bulldozes its way into classrooms under threat of labeling people bigots and
conservatives. The word we don't say out loud unless we're denouncing it.
Right.
That's the only one. Yes, and you cannot be a conservative and be a therapist either nowadays.
Harry, I found social emotional learning. It's actually in the next chapter.
Okay, I'm moving my way through then. Thank
Page
you.
134, if that helps.
I wish it did. The kid cut him down. And
it's in queer pedagogy. It's about
queer classroom.
20 pages in or something like that.
Okay, queer activist. Oh yeah, this is important. This talks about, just really quickly, DQSH, which is Drag Queen Story Hour. And that is a means of fostering inclusion and empathy for schools and communities. But as the author of drag pedagogy make clear, this marketing is strategically done in order to justify its educational value. One of the things that I found about, or the most jarring thing that I've seen about drag pedagogy is that that the goal is not about teaching them to respect diversity, but the goal is to not just create empathy, because most of us wouldn't be against being an empathetic human being. But what it is it's against, or it's about teaching them embodiment. They want to get as much of that low-hanging fruit. Those kids who are willing, those little tiny kids who are willing to say, oh, you said I don't have to be a boy today? Okay. Like, they are looking for those low-hanging fruit. And
they want to queer as many kids as they can.
Yes. And they want every person to be queer eventually.
Yeah.
So the goal is to induct them into the cult of queer theory. It says it may be that Drag Queen Story Hour is family friendly in the sense that it is accessible and inviting to families with children, but it is less sanitizing force than it is a preparatory introduction to alternate modes of kinship. Here, Drag Queen Story Hour is family friendly in the sense of family as an old-fashioned queer code to identify and connect with other queers. This is their language. This is used.
They changed the meaning of the word family. This is, again, changing the meanings of these words. So
it's hunting for them, right? It's hunting for those that are susceptible to this stuff. Queer activists think parents are too stupid and dangerous to be trusted with raising their children to be inclusive. Teachers must be deceptive in their methods to ensure parents don't get in the way of all the radicalization that must be done.
Mm-hmm. There's a whole section on navigating parental resistance.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And when I was running for office, we saw that with the UEA. We saw the Utah Education Association have a course on how to navigate parental resistance. I might drop it in here if I find that I have to.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't even a joke.
Wow.
Like I said, I really want to get into some SEL, the magic circle. We're still talking about queer pedagogy. There's a lot, and I want to, oh, queer pedagogy, finally. All right.
Yeah, it's about 5 pages after that, or 6 or something.
Freire defines critical pedagogy. Paulo Freire designed his program for consciousness raising, not knowledge permission.
Mm-hmm.
The goal was never to create knowledge. The point is to affirm the voices of the marginalized. Well, if your small child, is considered not marginalized, then they're not special, according to this. And if they're not special, then they can be pushed out so that we can center around others. That's it in a nutshell.
Yes.
Let's see. I want to move into, I'm getting there. I know I'm getting there. So the Gnostic means knowing. So it's a Gnostic. Generative learning opportunities. If you guys want to chat about anything while I'm looking. Oh, gamified education. So the third stage of Paulo Freire's method is to make the words learners, take the words learners find engaging and construct a Marxist political lesson around them. So in this one, I believe what I was reading, this was today. So I was reading about a math class, and the math class wanted them to have math with a purpose. I can't remember exactly what the words are, if either of you can. But it was math with a purpose, and they were supposed to find social justice issues that dealt with math. And so what and how it happens is, first they have approved sources, then the teacher has to either hand them out what they're going to use or approve what they choose to use. And the kids chose how transgender people are not treated well in the medical profession. Anybody want to make a math question with that? And then what she says is that many times they can't finish the math problem.
Oh my gosh.
And that's okay. They can't
And
finish.
that's okay.
They can't
Fine.
finish the math problem, but they've had a great discussion.
Right. About what it means to be trans.
And by the way, the kids are 5th and 6th graders. So these kids are in 5th and 6th graders. So then it says the fourth stage of Freire's process involved problematizing with pictures and graphs and charts by moralizing the images and data to conjure an emotional response from students. So they want our kids to think about how we're teaching kids to read. That's why I wrote gamified. So when they're teaching our children to read now, they're on a screen and they're guessing by the pictures. So for little kids, those books might be completely harmless. The owl was in the tree versus the horse ran fast. But then you start changing the images. I've got some images that we saw in our SEL of young children refusing to let a boy play who had a red hat on, who was obviously a Caucasian little boy. And then it said can join a cause. And these 3 kids had their fists up in the air and this is for kindergarten through 3rd grade. But this is how they're learning to read. Oh, a citizen can be anyone. And they show a citizen with a burqa, which of course the citizen can have a burqa, but these are dropping immediately ideas into the kids' heads. It doesn't matter what they're reading. It doesn't matter if they're reading. It matters that they're seeing those pictures and that those
And
pictures. Go
I
ahead.
find it very interesting that the little white kid that they had was wearing a red hat.
Did
That
they?
there's some,
Well,
right.
and on
Yes.
top of that, the
Yep.
signs that the kids had said no trumpets because the
Mm.
little boy had a trumpet in his treehouse.
Mhm.
You know, definitely
That's
Yeah.
nothing to
politicized
see here.
education.
It was for sure not happening.
Oh my God, it's out of
So
No.
you said you were talking about gamifying education. It's gone way beyond that now because they're all on Chromebooks, they're all digital, and everything they're learning is all game based
Yes.
Yes.
and instant gratification reward like on the
Yes.
screen.
Yes.
Yeah, and the teacher has no idea what is being taught in those. Anyway,
No,
That's
you're
such a
right.
there's
good
a lot
point.
that that I am not keen on about
Yeah.
digital learning.
I'm working my way through, I promise. I'm trying to get through here. Teaching children how to develop queer literacy, which is
Oh, yeah, you're almost there.
Okay.
It's the
Plus
next page.
critical literacy defines the notions of common sense because it does not even aim to understand that which is being read. Sorry, again, I was driving when I did a lot of this, so no, I wasn't driving. I was in the car.
I figured.
Okay, we are duh.
There you go. We made it.
Here. Okay, so queer pedagogy, or I'm sorry, crisis in social and emotional learning. So queer activists believe that entering a crisis is required and desired part of learning. They believe this because they think students must be shocked out of the harmful repetition of oppressive norms in their classroom. This is SEL, and we're going to go through it kind of fast, hopefully, because I tried to keep this. I wanted to keep it in an hour. This one's going to be an hour and a half, but I really wanted to get through this because next time we're going to talk about the psychology in the classroom.
Yes.
So, pushing children into a crisis is a necessary component of queer pedagogy because it stirs students to work for positive, and that up above it says social change. So we force our children into SEL. We make them think about hard things that are probably too heavy for them, but we don't care because our goal is to turn them into activists. Okay. There's one that I can't read again. Queer
activists must first persuade kids to see themselves as different by forcing a separation of their sense of self and from a sense of normalcy. They are then led to feel as though they are oppressed because they're abnormal. Only then can kids be taught that the key reversal that activates them, that they are abnormal because they are oppressed. That is, they would be normal too if it weren't for society's expectations to be normal on other terms. Society, by failing to accommodate their quirks, is making them abnormal. This is just a gigantic word salad. I mean, the thing is, these concepts, right? It's almost made to they almost don't want you to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but take that for little tiny kids. So take that for your small children, and you ask them how many kids in the classroom your favorite color is pink. How many of you your favorite color is green? How many of you your favorite color is blue? And so half the kids say, because they follow each other, half the kids say pink, half the kids say blue. One kid says green. Oh, it's okay to be different. And from different, you become the odd one. You become the special one. How can we make you feel special? It literally is that simple to start with. Let's find one way in which you're different than everyone else.
Yeah. And the beginning of that paragraph said, queer activists convince kids that they can't identify as normal boys or girls. They must choose political positions and enter into an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So they convince them that they can't.
Yeah.
Again, this is not about empathy, but embodiment.
That's right.
So, and then this is where it started. So, I cannot remember his name. I don't know if either one of you can look it up, but the head of Castle, and I can't remember his name right now for the life of me. Anyways, the head of Castle, he started off with the disability, this what is it, the Special Olympics. So he starts with the Special Olympics, and so it is most visible not for queer theory, but in disability studies, which has shared ideas and structured with queer theory for decades, under what is called the social model of disability. Interpreted critically, people with disabilities are not believed to be disabled. Remember, we're using the term differently abled, right?
Yeah.
So they're not to be perceived as disabled by their disabilities. They are disabled by a society failing to fully accommodate their disabilities.
Yes.
To the point that those disabilities are irrelevant in day-to-day life. So you can see why all good people would go, well, yeah, we should have accommodations for people with disabilities. Absolutely. But this is where I believe they're being used, because we should have those accommodations in day-to-day life, but we don't. But the other issues are not the same.
Well, the problem with all of this is that you're also reducing these children's ability to be resilient. So they completely identify and attach to this identity of being disabled or of having disabilities. And the fact of the matter is, there are things that they can't do probably that other people can. That's the reality of having a disability. That's a fact. Now, what you do with that, do you let that stop you? Do you let that, hold you back from pursuing things in life? Do you, find other ways to pave the road for yourself? You can do that if you've got some resiliency. But when the whole entire world is supposed to bend to each person's disability, each person's variation of skin color, each person's everything, then you don't learn how to stand up on your own 2 feet with a level of resilience and move through the world in a way that allows you to feel proud and to feel accomplished and to do things that you thought you could never do. There is no opportunity for that because we're sitting here bending to everybody's difference. And it's an aggression, it's a microaggression. I looked up Castle. It's Aaliyah A. Samuel is the current president and CEO.
Oh, okay. So it's changed because it was Tim Shriver. So he's probably moved into something different, but Tim Shriver was the person, I can remember his name. This is going to give up at exactly 12:30, and I do have a few questions from online, so I just want to read those.
Yes.
So Hope Cat says there's a difference between teaching kids to be themselves and intentionally teaching them to be weird just so they can grow up to be your personal activists. That seems cruel and manipulative.
Yes, it is. It's very cruel.
Yes, you guys, I really wanted to jump into Castle, but with looking at the time, we're going to have to start with Castle next time and then move. And it actually is a really good flow because Castle is what has justified bringing in so many counselors into the schools. But that's exactly what it is. The first time I looked at Castle, I was like, this is abusive. And I had a little earlier exposure to it from being a foster parent and going, why are we teaching the exact opposite to these children? The exact opposite of resilience. There has to be a reason why. And that's because if you have angry children who are reliant on government programs, well, you've got people that you can use forever. So the next one is, why is it always Christianity and not other faiths? Why do they focus on that religion over others? Whew. That is there's a lot, I believe it's towards the last chapter, but there's a lot of evidence that that Castle's work comes out of another religion that has very supremacist kind of values within that religion. And I do not want to get deeply into that without reading it directly from the source. So James from Bahia says, yay, Christina's in the house. I hope I said that right, Bahia. And then Susan Smith says, the school counselor at my former school consulted a fortune teller and helper, and her helper was into crystals.
What? What?
You know, I'm a classical liberal, and I think that people can do what they want to. My issue is when you're turning it on my kids. So when you're turning
That's right.
our kids, and also when we don't know.
That's
Because
right.
if we know, then we can say, hey, avoid that.
Right.
Let's avoid that, teacher. Let's avoid that. You know, don't go to the school counselor. If you've got an issue, you come home, you talk to me. From there, we move on to, you know, if you need a therapist, we find one that works.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to use the school stuff, which is greatly steeped in SEL.
That's right.
My friends, SEL, I have no other term for it. SEL is from hell. I find it extremely, extremely disturbing, flat out abusive. And it's really sad to see that so many administrators, there's a lot of teachers who aren't interested in it, but a lot of administrators adopt it. Maybe they adopt it because it's lucrative. Maybe they adopt it because it makes them feel like they're the professional in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know of schools that have said, we won't touch this stuff because we recognize what it is. And I very greatly appreciate those very few schools that do that. And I don't want to keep you guys any longer. If you have any last thoughts, we have 3 minutes. So if you have anything that you want to say as we wrap up.
I mean, I think sometimes even for me and witnessing what's happening and then reading about it in black and white, it's sometimes hard to believe that this type of manipulation and this type of evil has infiltrated for the past 3 or 4 decades, and we haven't been able to really see or get a grasp of it until very recently. The amount of damage it's done, it's almost like it feels conspiracy theory to me, but it's not conspiracy, it's actual fact. And that is what is hard for me sometimes. I will say, even as the therapist and former professor and all of those things, that's hard for me to take that in as reality. Although my eyes do not deceive me, I see and read and hear, and I'm very aware of what's going on, but it feels sometimes like we're living in this alternate universe that I just don't know how I got here. So I really feel for the parents that are dealing with all of this with their children. I'm not a parent. I'm a step parent. My role is very different, but my husband is a parent, and watching him navigate this has been, he's done it beautifully. Honestly, without a whole lot of help other than me. So, I can hardly believe it myself. But there is a way through. That's the other thing I think I want to end on, is that there's a way through this.
Anything, Elizabeth?
I just say amen to all that. That was good. Yeah. And yeah, I didn't see this coming either. I knew that our world was getting like wickeder and wickeder and farther away from where we should be, but I didn't see it turning upside down like this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I just want to end with, knowledge really is power, and it is scary and it is heavy. And I find myself, when I'm listening and studying for the next book club, just like finding my place in this like dark place where just like, how in the world could people do this to another human being, especially to children? At the same time, the knowledge that we have helps us to move forward wiser And if we can be more wise about it, if we can be more discerning, then we can help others do the same. So friends who are watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Please share it everywhere. Try to get more people to come on. We would love to have you comment if you want to, but then we also understand that there are some people who don't feel comfortable doing that. And we are just so grateful to have the opportunity. So we will see you next time when we cover SEL and finish with what we're talking about today. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, very good.
Let me make sure that I got I think I did. I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're still recording there. I don't want to do
It
that.
says this meeting is being live streamed.
It's still being live streamed.
Yeah.
Well, that's not great because I don't see my thing at the end. Okay. I